Hey, what's going on, everybody? I want to welcome you all to another episode of the Counterpoise Podcast. I am your co-host, Everett Stevenson, joined by my lovely, patient co-hosts as well.
Hey, everybody. My name is Malik Foster, another co-host for the Cowboys podcast.
Hi, everybody, and I'm the third co-host. My name is Samantha Adams, and we have a great topic for you today. Today we are discussing the reason why we got T for taxes, right? That is the name of our show, and the reason why we have titled this episode T for taxes because let me give you a quick little history lesson. Back in the day, the beginning of America, right? um, there was this little thing, this little event that had taken place called the Boston Tea Party. And if anybody knows anything about the Boston Tea Party, it was the people of America, the citizens of Boston. They were sick of being taxed, so they dressed up like Native Americans, got on the import boat, and threw the tea overboard, right? Because it was like, forget your taxes, man. So today we are talking about taxes. And we're not talking about you paying your taxes, but we are talking about paying taxes, but not like income tax. Today we're talking about property tax. And we're also talking about income, like and what it costs to like live and survive out here in America in these American streets. So I want to start off with an interesting news report that was on ABC News a few days ago. I'm gonna just go ahead and hit play. All right, you guys, let me know if you need me to turn it up or anything.
Several states are looking to eliminate property taxes to ease the burden on cash-strapped homeowners. But such a move won't be easy or cheap, and some warn that it could lead to a spike in taxes on income and sales. Here's ABC's Alexis Christophers. Tonight, some states are looking to lend a helping hand to homeowners feeling the pinch from rising prices, elevated mortgage rates, and now soaring property taxes. This week, lawmakers in Kansas will hold a special session to consider an annual cap on property taxes.
Would be helpful because right now it just feels like runaway property taxes. You don't know what's coming at you.
It'll be their fourth attempt at passing the measure. But proposals to curb property taxes, which pay for things like local schools, roads, and fire departments, have frustrated homeowners across the country and will appear on many ballots this year. Voters in Colorado and Georgia will decide to cap all property tax revenue. Nebraska may take up a similar measure. Idaho and Michigan are considering getting rid of property taxes altogether, something experts warn could lead to a spike in income tax and sales tax.
If you set that number too low, you are tying the hands of your local governments and you're eroding their tax base.
Years of high interest rates and low inventory, sending single family home values up more than 50% nationwide since 2019. At the same time, the median property tax bill has jumped more than 26% to nearly $3,000 a year, putting the squeeze on household budgets. Liddell Griffith, a mother of two, has lived in Kansas nearly her whole life. She says her family had sticker shock when the tax bill on their home went up nearly 40% in 5 years, which has meant less money for other things.
It means not as many gifts at Christmas time. It means not a family vacation. It means it affects our ability to pay for a college education.
Some experts say Wyoming is a good example of a state striking the right balance when it comes to property taxes. Instead of an across-the-board cut, lawmakers there recently capped annual increases and targeted additional relief to some seniors and veterans, ensuring that those homeowners who need help the most are getting it. Alexis, thank you.
All right. So that's the article that they did where they're talking about capping property taxes and or even completely doing away with it. So, let's talk about it. I want you guys to go first.
Okay, yeah. Well, we're going to jump right into the property tax conversation. And I think that's one thing that we wanted to kind of do is break down some of the things that property taxes are used for and what some of the property tax revenue kind of assists with. I know she mentioned something like schools, as well as, like we said, municipal services such as police and fire departments, road constructions. For my home state, that's definitely one thing that's big is those roads. Repairs, things is like such as libraries, water and sewage departments, as well as other services. from within the community kind of all benefit from the revenue that's raised from property taxes. And I think it's kind of interesting to hear as well, because we're going to get ready to reach off and talk about it a little later, due to like the rising cost of living, that how property taxes have also increased as well within that time frame, right? We heard a lady say something as small as like almost 40% within her time frame. And then and then we also seen some people say that they've seen theirs increase almost 26% in time frame as well, in about a 4 or 5 year time frame. So honestly, this is definitely something that's concerning, because again, the prices just continue to rise and they continue to rise. And then we're also seeing how again, this might help with some. One of the things that I think that we talked about was how certain states were looking into handling those situations. You guys want to talk about some of that real quick? Because I definitely want to comment on that later.
Yeah. I want Malik to go first.
It's very interesting. They want to do either a tax cap or they want to do kind of a hybrid. They had mentioned kind of what you were saying. Some states want to do a hybrid where maybe select individuals get those tax breaks as opposed to everybody having a sort of a cap, because, like the guy was saying in the video, it could be a potential issue for local governments and municipalities and such forth, because they get a lot of revenue from property taxes, right? And consistent revenue, even though everything's taxed, but that's something exclusively within the state's control. So they get a lot of revenue from that, where they don't have to, request the federal government for funding, right? So that's one thing to look at. And also, tax revenue, right? That can be an issue, because a lot of states gather a lot of their revenue from taxes, right? From local taxes as well. And I think another good idea that they're doing is trying not to make it like quarterly, like annually. And so some states have it where you got to pay every quarter a certain amount, and some states like is annually. So I think they're trying to shift some of those states that are quarterly are trying to shift to annually. So it's like more, people could prepare a little better, and maybe possibly it could be cheaper in the long run as well for everybody. So I just wanted to add on a little bit of that to what y'all already said.
Well, let me start where you left off. In a state like Georgia, the whole state doesn't have the same tax bill. It actually varies from county to county. So I'm sorry, when I say tax bill, I mean tax due date. It varies from county to county. So like in some counties, it might be quarterly. Some counties, it might be semi-annually. Some counties, it might be annually. It might even be biannually. That's probably rare, but the other three are probably more common, just depending on what county you live in. And then for those of y'all that don't know, with regards to property tax is based on the value of a home, right? And that is, based on the appraisal amount, how much money is that people paid for the house. The value of the house is also based on what the foreclosure market looks like in the area, whether or not there's blight, what the crime rate is. All of these things play a part in the value of a home. And so when you're talking about the value of a home, and they're talking about taxes, obviously, if you're in a very affluent area, the property tax is going to be much higher. They have different types of tax exemptions and homestead exemptions and things like that. When you first purchase a home, they'll ask for a certain amount of time because of the value of the home, and it helps to bring down the cost of those taxes. The money goes to things like they said, the fire department. They didn't say the police, even though it does, right? It also goes to schools. Schools is the biggest thing and roads, right? Because nobody wants to be driving around in a road and the pothole kills your car, right? Especially like, he described when he said that's important in places like his home state. Why? Because it snows there and they put salt out and the salt eats at the road. So they have to be able to pay for the salt truck so people are safe when they're driving, and they have to be able to repair the road when the salt eats up the street, right? And so when you're talking about that kind of stuff, like people will pay for that. Like, yeah, we'll pay. We don't mind paying for things like roads and schools and kids getting better education. Why? Because you can see where your money went. A lot of times we pay taxes and we have absolutely no idea where our money went. Don't you guys remember a few years back where they had that bridge to nowhere? Nobody knew where it was building this bridge to, but yet we're spending all this money on this bridge. Like, why is this bridge even in existence? What are we doing? You know what I mean? But when you're talking about where you see your money going, even if, like, we'll talk about funding to the police and whether or not they should be defunded and all that. That's all fine and good, but that's not what I'm gonna mention about the police. When you talk about police, you see where your money goes, right? You see whether or not they get new cars. You see whether or not they have different uniforms. You see if they have more military style weapons. You see these things. So even if you may not necessarily like where your money goes, at least you know where it went. So if you put a cap on that, that can have a hindrance. Well, let me rephrase this. If the cap is set too low, which could potentially help the pockets of the people as it relates to their property taxes, not only are the municipal industries such as police, fire departments, schools, roads, things like that are going to suffer, right? But they said that it could have an impact on income tax. Now, some states, I think there are only 6 states in the United States that do not have income taxes, but the rest do. And so that will make the income tax go higher. Those of y'all that are unclear as to what I'm talking about, that's how much money comes out your check for taxes, for your state taxes. And so, because the feds are going to get their money even if there is no income tax in the state. The feds still going to tax your money. But when you're talking about the state income tax, that means even if you get paid more money is coming out your check for them state taxes. And so that right there can also have an impact, especially when we start talking about inflation, right? So I figured that this is a cool. Wait, E, there was something that you wanted to say, and I wanted to kind of segue into inflation. But if you wanted to add to that,
No. I think like when you talked about the property taxes and some of the effects and things that it have, I was actually going to talk about how some of the states were looking to combat it. I don't know if anybody wanted to go into that in particular. We talked about how, of course, some states were looking to cap property taxes, and I believe the states in particular that have it on the ballot currently is Georgia and I believe Colorado. Are 2 states that are looking to vote on having a tax revenue cap on property tax revenue cap in 2024. We know Nebraska and Kansas are 2 states that are considering voting on a property tax revenue cap, and states like Idaho and Michigan are considering to completely eliminate property taxes. Right. And I thought that was significant because I think when we look at some of the things that may be occurring in today's societies that may bring in additional income that could potentially offset some of the money that they normally get from property taxes. I know in states like Michigan and Colorado and things of that nature, they've been able to garner income from, the marijuana sales and things of that nature that take place in their cities. And that was an additional tax bracket that may have came into states that may also allow for the offsetting of some of the costs that normally would be accustomed to being attributed to property taxes. So that may be something that allows some states to have the ability to take off the burden on some of the citizens directly because they have other revenue streams that's coming on. And I wonder too, like, is that also increase other ways that states might tax other things that maybe they weren't necessarily doing before, but realize that hey, because it's popular, that may bring in another income revenue that could offset some of the costs that they've had.
yeah, I don't know. I think
Yeah.
Go ahead, Malik.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I agree. It's gonna bring about some negatives, right? They might have to increase income taxes. That's what some I think one of the guys on the news report was saying. Like, yeah, the income taxes might increase. It's not all rainbows and butterflies, right? You have to have some sort of balance, and they give an example of a
Yeah.
state doing it in a balanced way instead of just going all in on like these caps, because they do have to do something because the rising costs. It has increased by 26%, the property taxes, even though people's incomes, which we're going to get into, the wages and the incomes a little bit of the states haven't risen to the same effect. So that's a big issue. That's why they're trying to keep these taxes down, because people will buy houses and then the next 3 to 5 years, you're entering foreclosure, filing bankruptcy, all these other things, and having your house seized. So that's an issue for a lot of Americans.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
what I was gonna say was that as it relates to the income tax, right? The negative impact that this could potentially have on income tax is that people aren't getting paid more, but yet they have to spend more, which creates a whole nother crisis in the housing market. Less people are buying houses. That draws the interest rate down to purchase homes, to make it more attractive. But the thing is, if you don't have the income, then it runs into the predatory lending type situation that we had back in 2008. And we don't want to have that happen again, because that created a market crash, and that almost put us in a economic depression within here in this country. And so when you're talking about the increase of income tax, right? What does that look like? Look at what we already have going on, right? Nobody's new to this. Everybody knows the cost of everything has gone up. It's made it very hard to be affordable. The young lady in that news report said her property tax went up 40% in a year. That's a lot. You know what I mean? And so her family has had to make certain sacrifices. And so that's what happens, right? If you're making minimum wage and your taxes, your income is getting taxed and it's taking that hit, that means you almost gonna have to go get another job to make up for the difference in that income and from that income tax, right? Because that's not enough that's not a livable wage. And so when we start talking about livable wages, we have a graph. Malik is gonna show it. It's not a graph, it's a chart or something, and it talks
Yeah,
about how much money people have to make in order to live comfortably in the United States, and it breaks it out state by state. So Malik, you're gonna go ahead and pull that up. And then we're just gonna
yeah,
see, like, and when we talk about comfortably, that means like that doesn't necessarily mean like you out here gallivanting and running the streets doing all kind of great, fantastical, wonderful things, but maybe you could take a vacation once a year, or you know what I mean? You can go out and buy things and but your money might be a little tight, but it doesn't mean, you can't do anything.
yeah. I see my.
Okay,
Yeah, I can see it now. All
go ahead,
right.
Malik.
So, yeah, ignore Charles Schwab. No sponsorships for you. Um, yeah. So what this is a chart of. This is based off of a single working adult, right? Um, Living in the U.S., not a household or a family, but this is to live comfortably. And what they define as comfortably is so they use a mathematical equation, but basically they use the 50/30/20 budget, right? 50% of your earnings go to housing and necessities and utility costs, and 30% discretionary spending, and 20% for savings and investments. So yeah, a lot of Americans don't fit under this because most Americans make 51,000 a year, so that's not going to work. So that's how they calculate living comfortably for those who are listening. And you can see this at visualcapitalist.com if you want to check that out for yourselves. So what's interesting here is that basically if you 11 the top 11 most expensive states, if you want to live comfortably as a single adult, you need to be making over 100,000 a year. Um, and the most expensive state is Massachusetts, and then followed behind Hawaii, right? So, and then California, New York, and Washington round up the top 5. And here we can see the top 15. Georgia, our state where we're at, Sam and I, 96,000. Not well, 97,000 if we round it up. So most of these states are on the East Coast or West Coast. We got one Southern state. I guess two if you want to count Virginia. Well, Virginia is the South. I guess three Maryland, but people consider Maryland the North these days. So it's very interesting. Even the cheapest state, West Virginia, right? You have to be making $38 an hour to live comfortably. So 79,000 if we rounded a year. So we have a wage crisis in this country. The wages are not going up as fast as the inflation is not combating the inflation at all. Um, that's why a lot of people are in debt and a lot of people are having money issues and a lot of people, we can't live single anymore. You have to live as a group these days, have a roommate, stay with family, get married, stuff like that in order to survive. So I said a lot and explained a little bit of the chart. You guys want to add on to it, or I'll keep
Yeah,
on turning it.
absolutely. So one of the things that I also wanted to talk to too was I think one of the things that we were talking about, and I just want to also highlight that these income were the incomes that were required for a individual. And I thought if we scroll up a little bit more, you'll see like they show it says based on a single working adult. It's
Yep.
like a young lady with a computer and glasses working. And so I thought that that was very interesting because that again, this is not a two household family income that's looking to bring that about. There's another chart here. I know Malik, if you I don't know if you see in the chat here, sent the link. If we can put that one up here momentarily, and it's going to show also by state, but it'll show us here the median income by states as of 2024. Um, and so once we
Um,
get those up, and this is also from Venture Capital,
Mhm.
if you can check the chat inside of the private chat that we have inside of the group here, you can see it in the chat.
okay. Yeah, I see it. You want me to pull that
Yeah.
up? Okay, hold on.
Yeah, if you don't mind, please. And I just wanted to kind of reference that as well, just simply because that's showing, like I said, this chart that we're showing here is kind of showing it from an individual standpoint of how much
Give it a
a
minute.
certain individual needs to make.
This is
And
it.
then this one that we're about to show
Alright.
momentarily is kind of showing the median income by states and letting us know like where people are kind of lining up against on that, right? And one of the things that those numbers, okay, one of the things that those numbers kind of came about and how that came about was through a study from the U.S. Census Bureau, which took in the incomes and the Council for Community and Economic Research, which is gave us our COLI, which is the call. And essentially, the index states that, you know what I'm saying, it takes into consideration that's the cost of living index, rather, which is received by the Council for Community and Economic Research. That index in particular considers six categories. It looks at grocery, it looks at housing, it looks at utilities, looks at transportation, looks at healthcare, and it also looks at other miscellaneous factors and things. So one of the things that we want to do when we have these conversations is to look at how all of those things factor in, right? Based on that, they said from the median income for people in the state of Mississippi, which had the lowest one rate, was around 477,000. $47,000. Excuse me, $47,000
Mhm.
a year. And
Yeah,
in the state of DC, excuse me, in the District of Columbia, there was a number such as
162.
162,000
Mhm.
um excuse me, $162,000 as the median income. Now we also know there is a lot of senators and a lot of other individuals who are, you know, big political figures that live
Bear with us. Bear with us while we.
Technical difficulties. There we go. There we go.
Sorry.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know what happened.
Yeah. But we back.
Okay.
It's because I had to rejoin, so it just
All right.
kind of
Gotcha.
knocked y'all.
All right, we're back. Got you
that.
guys. But yeah, like I was saying,
Some.
so yeah, I'll just continue discussing it. You don't have to worry about putting it up. But yeah, so we know DC has a lot of senators, a lot of other high level political players in the game, politicians. So you know that could also have a big effect on the income in that state and why there's such a high level median income of individuals. But I think that that's also important to see because we know when we look at both of these things, we've seen it from an individual standpoint, and then we're also looking at it from a median household income because we understand every individual aren't all individuals aren't able to live a comfortable lifestyle, correct? Well, I think when we look at the numbers here, in that chart that I'm discussing here, we'll notice that it kind of lets us see how we are doing in comparison to, say, our neighbors. And if I can get the ability to put the chart up, because I did want to show some of the different states within it, but
yeah, well, if you can just put that
some of
back
the
up.
different states, but it's okay for the time being. We'll do it another time. But for the
I think
yeah, we'll do it here another time here.
Yeah, we're having some technical difficulties. So please bear with us.
You should be able to share your screen on the bottom. Dang, sorry. Yeah, it should
Well,
be there.
How do I post it on the clip?
Well, while Everett and Malika figuring that out, let me go ahead and just if you can do it, Malik, that would be helpful. Yeah, so I wanted to chime in a little bit on a couple things with regards to some stuff. So one of the things that I didn't get a chance to say anything about was as far as the wages and the effects of the property taxes on wages. I know I started talking about that, but one of the things that I wanted to remind people, like, you know, one of the goals for most people is homeownership. And how do you do that if you can't make enough money, right? And it's hard to make money if you're always spending it, especially too with the amount of debt that we have in this country, right? So if we're always constantly paying debt, how do we get there? What does that look like for us? You know what I mean? Especially too when the pay wage is so varied from state to state. Obviously it's going to be because, you know, what different states have going on, like New York is heavily condensed with people. Massachusetts has high property taxes. They've had high property taxes for years because they have, a lot of people there, but also Massachusetts is one of the most, that's my home state, that's one of the most historical states in the country. Right. So, you know, they pride themselves on, you know, maintaining the historical attributes of the city itself and of different towns all around surrounding Boston. So that all plays a part in taxes and the property taxes and plus the streets, just like Michigan, because it snows there. You know, but also too, Boston has some of the best schools. And when I say schools, I'm not talking about necessarily colleges. I'm talking about public schools. Some of the best public schools in the country are in Massachusetts. So if the property taxes get taxed, what does that do to those schools, to those streets, to the infrastructure? What happens? Especially when you have a place like, you know, you have so many historical buildings that require maintenance for the historical properties in order to, you know, continue to educate people about the history of our country, right? And then again, you know, the guys touched on, you know, the revenue caps and what that looks like. But one of the things that I did want to mention is when you look at the great disparity in the amount of money that a person needs to be able to live comfortably, it's crazy. Like in Massachusetts, it's super high. That's like the highest because the property tax is so high. But then you look at a place like Arkansas, where you only got to make $51,000. The lowest is Mississippi, where you make $47,000 a year, right? And just think about it. If you live in a place like Georgia, and the median income to live comfortably is $67K, but minimum wage is like $5.25, what does that look like for the people living there? right? Like that makes it so much more difficult in order to be able to just maintain, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that if they do choose to do these cap, they have to be very, very careful in what that number looks like, because you know the schools in a state like Georgia aren't the public schools. I'm not gonna say all of them, but some of them are not the greatest. And so if you want to compete, not just with the rest of the world, but even within our own country, we have to be able to make sure we have good schools and that children are taught well. And we're not spending all this money on maintaining our cars because the streets are not taken care of, or we're worried about high crime because police are not being paid and you can't hire police because they're not going to make enough money, or houses are burning down and old ladies can't get their cats out of the tree. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. So like, these are things that they all have to be balanced out. And I did want to make sure I went ahead and touched on that. I think Malik, you were getting ready to say something else?
Oh, I was gonna just say that it's very interesting that on this chart, basically, you know, the average salary, nobody can really afford any of these places except Mississippi and Arkansas. It's 2 out of the 50 states are like the only ones where on average salary you can afford to kind of, you know, live based off of the charts that we were showing. But actually, you really can't as a single adult because none of these. I mean, the average salary is 51, and nobody's making that income. Maybe California. You know, a lot of Californians can kind of make it.
California is bankrupt, and that's the thing about that state of California. The fact that they have a comfortable, livable wage is $124,000 a year, but it's a bankrupt state.
Yeah, and they're one of the most expensive states.
Right.
In terms of a single person trying to live comfortably, you have to make over 100,000 over there. So it's tough. It's like you have to make over 100,000 almost everywhere.
Right.
E, did you want me to show anything else on the chart?
Oh no, I'm all set with that one. I just wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit.
No problem. All right, we're back.
All right. So I was gonna go ahead and get into the next portion of the subject. You didn't have anything else, right? All right, cool. So one of the other things we wanted to address was CPI. A lot of y'all don't know what CPI is. Most people don't. It's called the Consumer Price Index. Consumer Price Index is pretty much a number that kind of shows the value of goods and why the price fluctuates, right? And so if the market, if the real estate, if we talk about real estate, right? Think about 2008 when the real estate market crashed, the consumer price index went up, which made the cost of rent higher, but the value was lower. So that's kind of how inflation happens, right? So it's almost like, think about it like this. Think about, you never ever heard about being upside down in a car, right? Let's say you get a car that's you pay $10,000. Let's say you pay $20,000 for this car, right? You get a loan. The loan is $20,000. That's what the tax and all that, all bells and whistles, $20K, and you're paying on it, but the interest rate is high, right? And if the interest rate is too high, as you're paying the minimum payments, guess what happens? You're only paying towards the interest. You're not paying towards the principal. So what's happening is the value of the car is dropping, but the cost of the car still remains the same or even goes up in some instances, depending on what that interest rate is. And so what happens is you end up owing more than the car is worth, and then you become upside down. But when we're talking about the cost of goods, it's not necessarily that you're upside down. It's just that the value of what you're paying for, it's not worth it, but you might still need it though, right? Like we all need food. Those are goods, right? And so you go to the store, you want to buy milk. Milk is $5. Don't y'all remember about a year or something ago when eggs cost like $8? It's like, what are you talking about? Eggs cost $8. You know, it's things like that. So when you start talking about the CPI, that also plays a part in the value of goods and income, right? Because how much money we spend on goods, dictates how much money we get paid, right? So if you're talking about in the in the retail industry. Somebody may not necessarily get paid a lot, but they still got to go out and spend all that money. So it's a balancing act, and it's really, really tricky sometimes, but it's important to make sure you know what's going on. Like, I know a lot of people find this stuff, they can find it confusing, boring. They might be uninterested, but it does not make it any less important. So it's really important to kind of get the information, do with it what you may, but just remember these things when you go out to go vote, because election time is coming. And remember, we've said this to you guys many, many, many times, that local elections, everybody's always talking about the president. That matters. That's important. But the local elections are the most important, because that's the one that has the most impact on you. Guys, you guys want to add to that?
I think you pretty much hit it on those.
I pretty much agree on that, what you were saying.
All right, cool. So we're going to go ahead and slide on into our book of the month. Y'all don't mind Chino. He's our unofficial fourth member. He's, going to be damn near scruffing because I got some food. Stephen Hackett said, before I do that, Stephen Hackett said the most important things are the most boring things. That is very true. They say you want to hide something for somebody, put it in the book. But it's important that we know what we're voting on, the things that are important to us, because we'll be quick to go complain about something, excuse me, but we voted for the person that made that thing happen. So we got to be more mindful and careful about things like that. So back to the book of the month. It's called, because June is it's mental health month for Black men mental health month, and the book is called Self-Care for Black Men: 100 Ways to Heal and Liberate. That book is by Jarrell Carabello. He is a licensed therapist. Again, that book is called Self-Care for Black Men: 100 Ways to Heal and Liberate. The Black business of the month is called A Cold Wall. It's called acoldwall.com. They sell clothing. It's a streetcar brand that helps bring attention to racial disparities. So you want to go ahead and check them out. The website is right there. It's a-cold-wall, wall.com. So y'all want to go ahead and check them out as well. And E is going to finish us off with our motivational minute.
Yes, today's motivational minute today is brought to you by me. I want to go ahead and say, based on these factors that we're seeing, people need to stop playing. You need to stop playing and get you some protection, provision, and a neutral in your life. Okay, so we need to find these things, pair up with these things, individuals who displays these things, and get ourselves in position, because as we see, the rest of the things are not waiting on us. Inflation's not, housing's not, and stuff gets very serious. Things cost more and more each. Hello?
Yep, keep going. I can hear you. Keep going.
Okay, things cost more and more each year. You know what I'm saying? So we just want to go ahead and say, pick you one, get you one. And you know what I'm saying? Y'all go ahead and work it out, because again, it ain't getting cheaper. So that's what I want to say. Go ahead and find you the right one and work it out. You guys can catch us at Counterpoints podcast on Instagram, on YouTube. We go live here every Wednesday. You can find me on that guy at 2104 on IG, and then CP_EV on IG as well.
If you guys want to find me, you can go ahead and find me on IG at Samantha Renee 77_ESQ, or Samantha ESQ_Counterpoints.
Yeah, you guys.
Wait, and you can also find me on the Tag app at Sam I Am. That's SAMMIYAMM. So I say MM, and then mine is like a little triangle with a little eyeball in it, and YAM, YAMM. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. You can find me at Malik M. Foster on all social media handles, and Malik_Counterpoise. I do want to let you guys know that we won't be having a show next week due to the holidays coming up. And we will resume July 10th with our live show. So we'll keep you guys updated on that. Thank you guys for listening, tuning in. Everybody watches the replays. who watched the live show tonight. Appreciate y'all. Much love.
Yes. Later.
All right, guys. Peace out.
Oh,
Peace.
good to each other too, y'all. Don't forget that. Be good to each other.
Yeah, that too. All right.